In today's interview that we shall be having GSP Forum, we are hosting an erudite scholar, a professor of architecture, first ever in Eggon Land. Professor, it's a pleasure meeting with you.
Thank you very much. It's my pleasure.
May we meet you, please?
My name's Evelyn Allu-Kangkum. My surname Philip was Allu, and I added Kangkum, my marriage name. Married to Sir Barrister Cletus Kangkum. Between us, we have 5 male adults, the youngest being 25 years old. I went to primary school. I started with Magom Primary School in Kano before my father moved me to the girls' boarding primary school in Kabo, which today is a science secondary school, all in Kano State. And then for my secondary school, I went to the most popular girls' high school, Gendry. So I'm Gosa. I'm Gosa, 84. And then from there, I came to the University of Jos, where I had my first degree and second degree. That's my undergraduate in architecture, and I had a master's in architecture, and later had master's in construction management. So thereafter, I also pursued my PhD, and I went to De Montfort University in UK, one of the top universities as far as architecture and sustainability is concerned. And that is where I did my PhD between 2011 and 2014. So I was there for three years, 3 months, and then came back to the University of Jos. Even though I had a job offer, maybe if it were today, I would have stayed back. But I was so attached and rooted, and I felt I should come back. And they couldn't believe that a Nigerian would want to go back home. And I came back home to the University of Jos, even though I didn't even have any kind of sponsor, whether from the university or TEDFOR. Being a female, being in the sciences, which should have been, but somehow, my documents were said to have been missed at that time.
Wow.
So I sold all that I could. I sold my car, my trinkets, and I took off. And by the grace of God, I came back with my PhD in 3 years. So that's the journey, the architecture journey. And by 2021, I became a full professor of sustainable architecture, climate change, and the built environment. So that's my area of specialty. Yes.
Prof, you said the youngest of your children is 25?
25 years. Is 25.
You don't look 25 yourself.
Thank you very much. Even with the gray hairs.
Yeah. Okay, that's fine.
The older ones are actually stepchildren.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. It's nice meeting with you, Prof.
Thank you. And one of them is an architect.
Oh, great.
He's in
he took
Abuja.
After you.
Yeah. No, well, no.
Okay. Thank you very much, Prof. Some of the documentary evidence have shown that Dr. Alex Ekweme happens to be probably one of the first that bagged a PhD in architecture in Nigeria. Are there some lessons drawn from his work, or probably his lifestyle? Or maybe could that be one of the inspiring?
Not really, because the interest of reading architecture started before I knew who Alex Ekweme was.
Okay.
And to correct the records, architect Adeyemi was the first to have a PhD in architecture in 1974.
1974?
Yes.
In Nigeria?
Not in Nigeria. He studied abroad in the UK.
Okay, I mean in Nigeria first.
In Nigerian, first Nigerian and first PhD holder in architecture in sub-Saharan Africa. And he later became the first professor of architecture in the sub-Saharan Africa. Yes. Dr. Alex Ekweme had his PhD in 1978.
4 years
later. 4 years later. So he's about the third person, actually.
Okay.
Yes, so that's the story. So I was actually my first year in secondary school, around 1980, and then my dad came with drawings, and he was saying that he was going to build us a house. From drawings. I've never had that experience. I've never had that knowledge that you draw before you build a house. So I thought people just go about building houses.
And having different kind of shapes.
Yes, I didn't know the science behind it.
Okay.
So when he came, I was fascinated. I was very happy. I felt, oh, this is very nice. I would want to connect to this kind of thing. So that's how the idea of architecture started, really. And then much later, as I continued in secondary school, I wanted to become a pilot.
Okay.
So that was the dream. So I was shuttling between architecture because I didn't have so much knowledge of architecture. I didn't know that the person who designed the house was an architect.
You just love the drawings.
I just love the drawings, and that these drawings transform into houses.
Building.
So that was the intrigue for me. So, and then later I started hearing about architecture. And then when I came to UniJust, I was doing my remedial studies. Actually, I got chemistry as JAM gave me chemistry.
Okay.
But I didn't chemistry. What am I going to do with the chemistry? I just felt no.
You love drawings.
Yeah. So and then a friend was telling us about the courses that were being offered in the University of Jos. And when architecture was mentioned, that was my eureka. I just say, yeah.
That is it.
That's what I want to do. And luckily for me, I was a science student.
Okay.
So everything just fell into place, and I was given admission after a year in remedial to study architecture in 1987.
Great.
Thank you.
Prof, you held into this profession from the cradle till you became a professor.
Yes.
And now the first professor in Eggon Land, the first professor in North Central, first, and even second. I'm sure you must have faced some challenges.
Yeah.
Can you share that with us?
Yes. The first professor in North Central is the first female.
Okay.
There are a few men, but the PhD holder in the whole of Eggon Land and professor of architecture in Eggon Land. I'm the first registered. In fact, I had some male counterparts that read architecture before me in Eggon Land.
Oh, okay.
But they didn't get to even register. By the time I finished, I now even got to register professionally and left them behind. I didn't even know at that time. It was later that I got to know this information, that I was the first. And of course, in the whole of Nasarawa State. And all that's the information I got later.
Okay.
So architecture is fascinating. And it's a profession that keeps you alert. It's a profession that is interconnected to so many things. All the endeavors you can think of, you name them, architecture connects with them. And that is why even during my inaugural lecture, that was the main theme of the presentation, the interconnectivity of architecture, the rendezvous of architecture.
Okay.
That was what I talked about. And of course, the razzmatazz. And surprisingly, that's my nickname now. Anywhere I am in UniJust or outside UniJust, even in the church, they call me Professor Razzmatazz. That's the name now that people call me, Professor Razzmatazz, because they want to remember the lecture and all that. Yes. And quite a number of Eggon people turned up that day. I was surprised. General Angwazu was there. The Doman Eggon. Controller Sule Alu was there. And I just informed them, and they surprised me by turning up. And then the royalties from my husband's side and some people from his side too graced the occasion. People came. A friend traveled all the way from Sudan and attended. Yes, she's been a childhood friend, and she felt if this is the peak of your profession, why not? So architecture has connected me to many people, and architecture connects with every kind of profession you can think of, be it fashion design. We have architects who have excelled internationally and locally. In politics, like you have mentioned, Dr. Alex Ekweme, even the Vice President, Namadi Sambo, is an architect.
Oh, yeah. That's true.
Then we have other, like the first female architect from Austria. She's also an architect. She's also a politician.
Okay.
So we have so many records of people in politics who read architecture. And then we have people in the core sciences, engineers, Michelangelo.
Oh,
we
yeah.
talk about there as an architect, he's an engineer, he's everything. So that's what architecture does to a person. Like if I tell you that I'm also into small designs of clothing, I'm into business.
Wow.
So architecture opens your mind.
Everything.
I do writings, apart from the academic writings, I also do other leisure writings. So that's what comes out of architecture. And then we also have people in the theaters,
Okay.
you know, in the military. We have, even in Nigeria, we have a General Ekegoha, who was one of the 4 survivors of the air crash that happened in 2002 in Kano.
Okay.
He's one of the 4 that survived. He's an architect.
He was an architect.
Yes, he's an architect.
And I think some pastors too.
Yes. Like the Bishop Oyedepo, he's an architect. Yes.
Wow.
Abifarisin. Yes, he's an architect.
Okay.
We also have some of the females. They are all like architects, so they venture into it. But even from Unijos, we have an architect, a boy from Kaduna State. He's a reverend too, so he's a clergyman. So we have quite, and we have missionaries, you know, going around that started as architects, but today they're doing something else.
I saw in one of your write-up that Leonardo da Vinci happened to be an architect. Now, I knew him to be an artist. I studied art, so...
So architecture, the simplest definition of architecture anywhere you go is an art and science.
Oh, that's where he comes in.
Yes, but he is not just an artist, he's also an architect. So it kind of, and I'm sure when you go through the inaugural lecture booklet, you see the connections. The architecture is also a dance.
Really?
Yes.
That's theater art now.
Yes.
Performing art, right?
Yes, performing arts. And that's why we even have people in the theaters who are actors doing their own show. And then we have architecture that is music. So when we say music is frozen architecture. And we have structures that depict, when you see a structure, you just see a piano, you just see a guitar. And then when you see some structures, you see that they are dancers, they move, and that's architecture. That's what the world is all about.
Maybe I have to go back to study.
Yeah, that's what Rear Admiral Atukum told me after listening to my inaugural lecture. He said, I wished I went into architecture. You know, he's an engineer.
Okay, great. So can you please relate, you know, the Eggon buildings and construction, the ancient Eggon buildings and constructions to your field of study of architecture? Yeah. Because our parents have been building since time immemorial. So how do you relate that?
Architecture in general, we have traditional architecture, what we term traditional architecture.
Okay.
Traditional architecture is an architecture of different people in different places and is determined by the kind of materials and the kind of forms and things they use to depict. And of course, their culture plays a lot of role in it. So in terms of the Eggon architecture is one of the regional architectures that we have in Nigeria. And Eggon traditional architecture is mainly has the characteristics of the dwelling types on the savannah, but with small modifications because it initially were in the highlands, in the hills. So hill style architecture can be Eggon architecture can be defined to be a hill style architecture and at the same time a savannah architecture.
Both hill and savannah.
Yes.
Okay.
Because the Eggon people were not mainly in the hills also. There were some that were on the flatlands.
Right.
Yes. So they kind of married the two. And those that are in the hills took advantages of the caves. They built around the caves. They used the stones to do their wallings, to do their demarcations, fences. They use stones.
Right.
So such things. And then those on the lowland, of course, they are now the ones who use the thatch to roof their houses and things like that. But those on the hills usually will use an offshoot of a rock to kind of cover. and that gave them a lot of advantages during the intertribal wars.
Right.
They now
that's true.
retreat into those caves, and they use caves for burial chambers, and they use caves to store their food items, seeds, and all that. So that's what Eggon architecture is all about. And when you look at the form and plan of the Eggon architecture, you discover that it is secular, but their roofing system are usually oblong or conical in shape.
Oh, yeah.
And usually in every traditional architecture, it says a lot about the culture, the tradition, and the dance formation. And you discover that all those who dance around the circle have their forms round. Because I teach traditional architecture, so I have seen this. And then you discover that some tribes don't take those formations.
Yeah.
They go
Yes.
Yeah, in a line, and then you discover that most of the houses, when you look at the house architecture, look at Igbo architecture, they go in a line. So you discover that their architecture are rectangular. Even their openings, their windows and doors are rectangular. Unlike ours are circular,
and then
every
conical.
openings, and then the conical, and the conical is the what? The Ishi alcohol.
Oh, here it comes.
Yes.
Because I read in one of your articles at the time that the conical shape
of the roof
of the Isiakor that we have has something to do with the Eggon traditional architecture. And I was wondering how that is linked. Now I got it.
Yes, because the architecture is always married to the culture
of the people,
their tradition, their dance formations, and their costumes. So you can see that even though everything is secular, when it goes up, it becomes kind of conical and oblong in shape.
Okay. There was this time I traveled to the Eggon Hills. And when I was walking, climbing the hill, there are about 7 hills you keep climbing and climbing from one hill to another to go to our route. And I noticed the kind of staircases our ancient parents built. I wonder how they achieved that. With rocks and mud. Till today, those staircases are there and still very strong. Comparing to the kind of constructions they do now.
Yeah.
And even the walls I saw is quite fascinating.
Yeah.
So traditional architecture is something that one should really study.
Yeah. I will encourage people to do that. And I also want to challenge archaeologists and historians. I'm open to collaborations so that we can go and enhance what is there and bring it to the open so that we can have tourists like we have in other Ikogosi and all those. We have it here in the Eggon Land.
And journalists,
journalists, yes, very much so.
So tell about the story.
Yes, you tell the story, because without you, the story won't be told.
Exactly.
So they're very important. And then Eggon is a very rich culture and has a very rich language. I discovered that interacting with other people, there are certain things that they don't have the names in their languages. They only have like interpreted names.
We have the original.
We have the original, which means the Eggon culture has been very rich. We have names for different types of chair, and then we have things like spoons. Some cultures, some cultures don't even have, because to them these things are recent.
Yes,
but the Eggon people have them from onset. They have the real name, not descriptive names, like some names that we hear from other languages. And those sites, those Eggon sites, are sites that should be opened up to the general public, to the world, for tourism purposes, for history purposes, and for other studies, research.
Okay.
I would also want to encourage, if there are Eggon researchers, especially PhD candidates, to really go into that study to bring out some of these stories, rather than relying on what other foreigners write about. Yes. You should be able to tell your own story.
By yourself.
Not to be told a story that is based on perception.
That's right. Oh, that's fine. So, Prof, I would like you to, at this point in time, tell me the advantages of architecture over every other course that is being studied in the university.
Yeah, first and foremost, let me start by saying that if for anything, starts with letter A. So let's start with that joke.
So architecture, I've taken it.
So architecture is known to be the hardest course in the whole world. This rating was not done here in Nigeria, so I wouldn't be saying to be biased. And this is because architecture is connected to every sphere of life, to every discipline. Architecture is connected to those. And because the architect is the head of the building team, he needs to know a little bit of engineering, building. He needs to know what quantities, electrical, because you do specifications and things like that. So you need to know all these. So we do their courses. And if you, for instance, if you have read building or quantity surveying or something, if you are coming into architecture, you start from the basics, from 100 level. But if you are an architect, you will not start from, because you have the general knowledge of all that. So that's the advantage that we have. And you find out that, like I told you, I have a master's in construction management.
Yes.
Yeah. But they cannot come to architecture and have a master's right away because they need to know the rudiments. But because we already have the basics, we can go and do. I could even do a PhD in any of the, whether it is planning or so things like that. So that's what architecture is all about. And I had told you earlier that it's also connected to other professions and other disciplines, be it in the arts or in the sciences. Like I said, the simplest definition of architecture is that it is the art and science. Of not just buildings, construction,
general life sciences,
space, things like that. And that is why when you want to read architecture, you must have the basics. You must have the basic sciences, maths, physics, English, to be able to communicate.
Yeah.
And then, of course, chemistry, geography, technical drawing. So those are the core courses for someone who wants to read architecture.
Great. I'm sure there are a lot of Eggon youths that are listening to you now, both boys and girls. I'm sure a lot of young girls will be taking some challenges from you. I would like you to tell them the prospects of architecture in today's world.
Yeah. In today's world, AI has taken up a lot of professions. Like someone was saying that I've read, that even medical doctors, the medicine, science, is in the decline because AI you can tell AI your
illness,
your symptoms, and it tells you what to do, But in architecture, because we do not just dream and it happens, we also do lot of calculations. You understand the emotions, the religion, you have to know all this to be able to design for somebody. Every line has a story in the design of architecture. So the prospects are enormous for people who want to read architecture. Just get the basic O levels, and when you have them, to study architecture means you have to sit up, you have to walk. You can't be everywhere all the time. You have to study. When I was a student, I was right from birth, I've been a tomboy.
Okay.
So when I was a student, you come to the studio at night, you see all the boys, even though we were very few girls then, but I'm always there with them, doing all the work together, everything. We sleep in the studio in the morning, we just brush outside and come back and dress up for lectures, especially if we have a studio submission of our designs. So that is what we used to do. So it means hard work, but the hard work pays if you are diligent in your work.
I'm really moved, honestly, and I'm fascinated with your words this morning.
Thank you.
Okay, we want you to kindly relate the nature of Eggon Land, migration, structures, culture, and belief system as it's applied to your field of studies to serve as a promotion of your people globally.
Okay.